y'all, welcome and welcome back. I have more of my cats having zoomies today. Ow! One heard me talking shit. I have more of your own stories to read to you today, so let's get into it. If you guys have any stories you'd like to send for me to read, please send them to the email in the description and just put YouTube in the subject line. But without further ado, let's get into these stories. I know these aren't your conventional forms of scary, but I find the way that this world operates to be a scary enigma as well. Even if you aren't creeped out, I hope you read these and are as perplexed by these stories as I am. I have a lot of crazy things happen to me regarding deja vu. I don't understand it because out of everyone who gives me these stories, none of them are as frequent or to the extent that mine are. This first story I have requires a lot of context and is pretty long, so I'm sorry for that. It started when I was in middle school. There was this popular texting app that had popped up and was running amok across the internet, especially for people my age at the time. I found solace in talking to many people in many groups and soon was introduced to one person that I will refer to as Mila from here on out. Mila and I met in around 6th grade, and of course for some reason were very attached to them. I loved to make people happy back then and still do to this day. With that being said, I was always messaging them good morning and wishing for their day to be well. We always talked in and outside of a group chat, and for some reason one day after knowing them for maybe a month or two, I had a dream about a conversation with them. I don't remember it as vividly now, but the biggest thing I'll always remember is them saying, "I too am," name of person in our group chat. They essentially confessed they talked on alternate accounts in the group chat and sometimes elsewhere. I had no rhyme or reason to, but something within me told me to take this as fact. I never wavered it. I never doubted it. I knew it was true. It was going to be true. Somewhere in me, I knew one day they were going to tell me that they were that person. Well, come to find out, a few months of being friends, they completely ghosted me and would never answer my messages I sent. I lost contact with them for about 2 years. However, they didn't come back to my life through that account I knew them on. I would dig through the last remaining people still active on the app, and there's a feature where you can see who all is still active, and I would click into that feature and browse. There was only about 5 to 13 if I remember right, and I clicked the profile of a promising one. Something in me told me this was Mila. It wasn't just the text style on her page, it wasn't even the fact that I think the 2 interests listed were the same. I just had this feeling. This was my friend. I messaged them and we got to talking. We weren't as talkative and I had a falling out with an ex of mine on the app, so I told Mila I was moving to another messaging app and we exchanged usernames for it. We began to talk there, and eventually they introduced me to a friend of theirs, and we made an artist group chat with just the 3 of us. Mila continued to pose as this other facade without ever once coming clean to me. They continued to try and keep up the act. They shared very little of their characters and tried really hard to not seem like themselves. Eventually it all boiled down over one day when I finally felt so gaslit I argued with both of them. Mila hadn't been honest, and this friend didn't say anything either. I had a crush on their friend at the time, so it hurt a little more seeing now neither of them seemed to truly care how I felt. Mila and I would talk in DMs about it, mostly me just being upset with them before finally they told me that they wanted to tell me something, and after waiting hours they told me who they were. They were indeed Mila. I asked them one simple question that would show whether or not I could trust my gut in the future. Were you, name of the other account, too? And they would admit that they were. They had about 3 other accounts too that confirmed with me that day, and I felt like a huge weight was lifted off. I'm now dating this person, and I can't help but feel something out there, whether it was my future self or not, wanting me to know to hang in there to give me a heads up. This is the end, but if you or anyone else wants it, I can always share some other stories, as I actually get deja vu quite often. But that was the craziest case of it. Literally spanned 4 years. So I don't know if deja vu would be the right word for that. I'm sure some of the other things you experienced are, but that seems more like a premonition to me personally. Like, I think you might be a little bit clairvoyant. But I would like to hear your other stories to see if it spans, like, into deja vu or if it's, like, clairvoyancy. Which, like, maybe deja vu is a little bit of clairvoyancy. I don't know. Alright, let's get into the next story. For this story, please call me Renee. I've told my friends my story when I was older, and they all agree that I must have been young enough to make it up and believe it. But my grandparents and I know the truth. When I was 6, I was adopted by them, and that's when I started to realize what was happening around us, but before we get there, we have to go back a bit further. My grandma, maybe 30 at the time, was sharing a house with her niece when they started noticing some weird things. The lights would randomly flicker, they would see shadows, and once my grandma went to wake her niece up for work and she was asleep on her bed refusing to wake up, so my grandma called her mom, and when her mom got there, they both went to wake her up when they realized whatever was in her bed was gone. Her niece had left for work hours prior. After that, my grandma met my grandpa and they moved to Florida. In every house, hotel, or rental they stayed in and they heard and saw things. Once they were staying in a hotel where they got a phone call from a hotel phone and they answered it and it just kept saying, "Is Joe there?" That's my grandpa's name. With heavy breathing. They weren't caught off by it, but they went to the front desk when it wouldn't stop ringing, and that's when they found out that the hotel phones can't call other rooms. The front desk hadn't given out their name or room number. A bit after that, I was born, and they found themselves buying my haunted childhood home. Before they left, for some unknown reason, my grandpa said for the spirits to come on in, it's time to go, we're leaving. And I truly believe something came with us and is still with us. Before they adopted me, I would come over almost daily for them to watch me, but this time it was only my grandma and my dog that would come with me. Everything was great that day from what my grandma says about it. She just remembers me getting a sippy cup with the screw-on lid since I like to take them off, and I was staring down the hallway in a trance-like state. She kept calling my name as my dog stood beside me, growling at whatever was there, when all of a sudden it picked me up and threw me back to where she was. It threw me so hard that the screw on my lid flew off. I don't remember that day when I must have only been 2 or 3 at the time, but that was not my last encounter. When I was fully adopted by them, I moved in and things just got worse. The point of the story is just little parts that I remember happening, so I'm sorry if they all seem just a bit jumbled. When I was maybe 7, I got bunk beds. I'd always sleep on the top while my Steffi slept on the bottom. Well, one night I was wide awake when for some reason I had this urge to knock on the wall. I brushed it off because why would I want to wake my grandpa up by knocking on the wall? He's the type of person when you wake him up, he's a grizzly bear. So anyways, my room sat in front of my grandparents' room, and beside the storage room, I ended up knocking on the wall 3 times, and something knocked back 3 more times from that storage room. I never knocked on walls again. Things went missing, like a pack of cigarettes, and they were gone for 2 years, and one day we walked in the living room, and they were right there on the table where they were 2 years before. Same with the vase. It was gone for a few months, and then all of a sudden it was back under the sink like it used to be. This part, I'm not sure if it was a fever dream because I was sick or not, but I was sleeping on the floor, my parents were in bed asleep. And I remember waking up and still feeling sick, and I kept seeing an orange man waving at me. It was like he was on track. He just kept sliding in my door frame and then back to the wall, and every time he would get to the door, he'd smile. It wasn't creepy at the time, but now looking back at it, it kind of freaks me out. At this point, I must have been 8 when I met a little girl named Nora. She wore a white dress, almost like a nightgown, and she told me that she didn't have any friends, so I became her friend. She also had no face, and when I asked her about it, she told me she was in a fire and that's why she doesn't show it. I didn't bring it up to my grandparents till they asked me why I was so tired for school all of a sudden. I told them it was Nora. She wanted to play, but only at night. I was her friend, so I played. They didn't believe me, but they just thought I was staying up all night. A few weeks after that, I remember us eating dinner when I saw Nora looking at my fish in our fish tank. So I told them. They didn't see anyone. At this point, my grandpa was tired of me saying there's Nora every 5 minutes, so he told me to snap out of it and go to my room. When I went to my room, Nora came up with me, and Grandma was cleaning up, and she noticed footprints on the table that our fish tank was on. She called me in, and the feet were too small to be mine. They started to believe me after that. I forgot to mention that the dog that I would always bring over wouldn't go in the living room ever. She would stand outside of the doorway and bark and growl for days, but never step foot in there. I never liked staying in that home alone. Every time I did, I felt uneasy, like I was being watched. I remember when I was 8 at the time, and I didn't know what feeling watched felt like, so I just brushed it off. But we talked about my grandma's experience as well as mine, so let's talk about my grandpa's. Not a lot happened to him, just a few things that I remember. He once told me that he had the urge to step outside, and it was the middle of winter, but he did it anyways, and when he went to walk back in, the door slammed in his face. He was locked out. He told me when it locked, he was struggling to get in, and he heard the most gut-wrenching laugh you'd ever hear. He was stuck outside for almost 2 hours in the snow with no shirt and his pajama pants and a coat. Another time, he was laying down in his room when he saw a black shadow come in and stand there and then leave. I wish this was the end of it, but there was a little more. We moved again, and this time my grandpa went to his grandpa's old house while we moved a few minutes down the road there. My grandma would feel a cat crawling on her bed, which wasn't weird since we had one, until she went to pet her on the bed and there was nothing. I've only had this happen to me once, and I don't want it to happen again. It scared me so bad. I was paralyzed with fear. My grandpa, when he moved, he started noticing this huge black shadow figure that was in the house. That brings us here to the end. I still have no answers to what happened, and I'm really not sure what it was or if it's still there. But I hope writing this somehow doesn't start things back up. Thank you for listening, and if you have any answers or advice, I'd be so grateful. That's a lot. I would start with a cleansing and see if that helps. There is a lot going on around your family. It could be because your grandpa said for the spirits to come and they just listened. I get saying that. That's something I would say. So it seems like a few of the spirits in there aren't really harmful. Like the kitty, I feel like isn't harmful, but oof, that's a lot. This next story is from Appalachia. I've been hiking in the woods and foothills many times, and I know my way around. I'm familiar with all the critters that live here: black bears, deer, coyote, coy dogs, skunk, etc. None of my family likes to go out and hike, so I always went alone. I told them when I went, but not where. I don't have any friends that enjoy hiking either. It's almost past tense as I don't go anymore due to being disabled from an autoimmune disease. Anyway, I was out in an area that I enjoyed and I'd been many times before. It was in the fall and the air was crisp, but the sun was nice and warm. I made it to a fairly large clearing in the woods when I hear, "Hi, hi, hi Brian, hi." Now there wasn't anyone else around, let alone someone who knew my name. I didn't recognize the voice either. Hearing my name was weird and actually kind of scary. As I was looking around, I got the feeling that I was being watched, and the beginning of what I can only describe as dread starts to rise up in me. Now I'm very familiar with the rules of hearing things in Appalachia, so I turned right around and started making my way back. As I reached the tree line exiting the clearing, I looked back. I knew not to, but like an idiot I did. Across the clearing was a dark figure. Even though I couldn't make out facial features, I got the distinct feeling it was looking right at me. I froze for just a second, and then this thing starts laughing. I don't have to tell you that I hightailed it out of there lickety-split. I felt watched the entire 55 minutes or so it took me to get back to my car. Nothing followed me home, thank the heavens. But I still get the creeps thinking about it, and that damn laugh will haunt me till the end of my days. Ew. Alright, let's read one more story. I have a couple of paranormal stories for you to tell on YouTube if you want. The first story is a sweet one, and the second one is terrifying. So this first one happened when I was upstairs with my neighbor and my bestie when she was giving me a tarot reading. She calls upon my ancestors and past family members, and my great-grandmother, who I called Granny Marie, came through. My bestie asked my granny to give me a message through the cards and through herself, and I can't quite remember the exact cards that came out. But basically, she said that she knows that I've been through a lot and she's proud of me. She loves me and she visits me often. I immediately get this warm feeling and I start crying. The second story is kind of long and kind of crazy. I'm from West Virginia and I'm around 45 minutes from a town called Milton. There's this place in Milton that's now being turned into a golf course / resort, but it used to be called Morris Memorial Nursing Home. When it originally opened in 1936, it was called Morris Memorial Hospital for Crippled Children. They treated children with polio. Then the vaccine was created and there was obviously no use for it, so it was closed in 1960. Well, then it reopened as a nursing home in 1961. It stayed a nursing home until 2009 and stayed abandoned until someone bought it for the resort. My mom and Mama were able to find one of the photos from our very first visit there and on our way home from the Pumpkin Festival, which is a little festival the town has every October. I also have a story from my mom from another time that we were there. My mom can see spirits and has for a lot of her life. So this one year we went to the Pumpkin Festival with a few people. It was me and my mom, my 3 brothers, my stepdad, my stepbrother, and my cousin. We decided to stop at the nursing home afterwards because we wanted to show my stepdad, brother, and cousin. This was on October 9th of 2016, years after the photo was taken. So we're there and exploring when my mom decides to go off by herself on the second floor. Why she would do this is beyond me. She leaves us and we're walking around downstairs, being careful since we're in an abandoned building. My stepdad and I are walking around together and we step into a long hallway. We see a shadow down the hall from us and we think it's my mom, so we call out to her, and she steps into a room further down the hall. Weird. My stepdad and I think it might just be because she low-key can't hear, and we're like, alright, whatever, and we keep looking around. A few minutes later, as we're near a stairwell, we see my mom come flying down the stairs, and she says to us that we have to go. Now. She's white as a ghost, and as she ushers us out of the nearest broken window on the ground floor, we get in the car and go eat since we're all kind of hungry. My mom stays silent the entire way there. We get to the restaurant. My mom still looks so freaked out and stressed, so I asked her to come to the bathroom with me, and once we get in there, I turn to her and say, okay, spill. Something happened at that nursing home, and I won't leave this bathroom until you tell me. So she proceeds to tell me this. As the rest of us are sticking together downstairs, my mom was walking around upstairs and looking. All around her, she's seeing the past patients of both the hospital and the nursing home. As she's walking, she notices that there's a nervous middle-aged male energy surrounding her. He's following her. She takes note of that energy and how he's causing her to feel cold, like she has a weight on her chest, but she continues to explore. That energy follows her into a room, corners her, and rushes past her. She runs out of that room, down the hallway, and into another room. Mind you, this whole time she's also seeing other spirits, kids, old people, and everyone in between. The room she runs into just so happened to be all old people. The man who was following her caught up eventually, and when he did, my mom said that he walked up behind her, got close to her ear, and whispered, "Get out now, or I'll kill your babies." That's when my mom ran to find us, and we left immediately afterwards. This picture was taken on October 5th of 2013 at that same place. The only editing that was done was what we increased in the brightness, if that even counts. Even if this doesn't make a TikTok or a video, I hope you still enjoy. Anyways, that is all for the stories today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you tomorrow.